So, now we are entering a very challenging time in our history, the Great Depression. When the markets crashed, millions of people losing all their money, their homes, there were no jobs. This affected the whole world. Hopefully, we'll never go through this again. However, we did come close about 5 years ago, and we're still kind of in rocky times. I've had several students tell me their parents were losing their homes in foreclosure due to them losing their jobs. So, think about it. It could still be happening. That's why I want to make you aware of this. So now we're going to look at what happened in 1930, and it lasted almost 15 years. So when it started, people felt really prosperous before the Depression. But there was a weakness in the economy because 1% of the population had lost most of the money, had most of the money. Everyone else was borrowing money. They went and invested in stocks like people do, thinking they're going to make a lot of money off of it. But you got to be careful. So there's a saying, history does repeat itself. So the day known as Black Tuesday, the big stock market crashed on October 29th, 1929. It all started going crazy. So watch the clip that's going to be happening now to give you an idea of what it was like. So international trade plunged by more than 50%. Unemployment rose to 25%. Construction was virtually stopped. There was no money to buy goods. Production halted. Banks failed, so they ran out of money because everyone rushed in to get their meager savings. It was not good. At this time, President Hoover was in charge, and he kept insisting things are going to get better. His philosophy was that it was not the government's job to help people because that would take away people's initiative. So if that wasn't bad enough with everyone losing their jobs and things being awful, there was a horrible situation arising in the Midwest. After many years of happy farming, due to many bad decisions and a drought, the soil became dust that blew away in clouds that sometimes blackened the sky for hours. This was known as the Great Dust Bowl storms, a horrible situation that lasted over 10 years where people were choking on dust, couldn't plant crops. Eventually, this situation forced tens of thousands of families to abandon their farms. Many migrated to California, although there were little resources to help them relocate or find jobs, and the Californians resented them. Watch the following clip. You would not want to have been there during this time.
The old house just vibrating like it's going to blow away. And I started trying to see my hand. I kept bringing my hand up closer and closer and closer and closer, and I finally touched the end of my nose and still couldn't see my hand. That's how black it was. A lot of people got out of the bed, got their children out of the bed, got down praying, thought that was it. They thought that was the end of the world.
Dust storms engulfed whole towns, ensnaring residents in a whirlwind of stinging, blinding dirt. Thousands would get sick from a mysterious illness. Scores would die.
There's a great book that won the Pulitzer Prize by John Steinbeck. The novel is The Grace of Rap. I'm hoping you get to read it someday. And it's all about the plight of the families who had to leave, had to put everything into their broken down jalopy cars and head off, knowing not where they're going to end up without jobs or anything. Some more clips coming up to show you this time
Chances are
period.
you're tuning in because you want the quick scoop. What is The Grapes of Wrath about, anyway? Let me put it this way. You can sum up this story with the lyrics from a song by Michael Jackson. There's no way we could get the rights to the song, so I'll say the lyrics for you. Here's a synopsis of the Grapes of Wrath according to Michael Jackson. Heal the world, make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. Okay, so Jackson wasn't technically singing about the Grapes of Wrath, but he definitely captured the spirit of Steinbeck's story. The Grapes of Wrath traces the journey of a family from Oklahoma, the Joads, who lose their farm to the bank and set off to California in search of a better future. They don't find it. In fact, what they find is more misery in the form of low wages, awful prejudice, terrible bosses, and terrifying police. As migrant workers, they're not really welcome in California, and it's all they can do to maintain their dignity, not to mention stay alive, amidst some mind-bendingly horrible conditions. But maintain their dignity they do, mostly because of their strong sense of family. And in the end, it's the Joads' desire to see things made better not just for their own family, but for the whole migrant family that makes them heroes, and their story a faint promise of a more hopeful future.
This here's a 15-cent loaf.
Well, could you see your way to cutting off 10 cents worth?
Give him the loaf.
No, sir. We want to buy 10 cents worth, that's all.
Go on, it's yesterday's bread.
Go ahead. Bert says to take it.
Well, it may sound funny being so tight, but we got 1,000 miles to go, and we don't know if we'll make it. Is them penny candies, ma'am?
Which ones?
There, them stripy ones.
Oh, them. Well, no. Them's 2 for a penny.
Give us 2 then, ma'am. Go on, take 'em, take 'em. Thank you, ma'am.
Them ain't 2 for a cent candy.
What's it to you?
Them's a nickel apiece candy.
We better get going. We're dropping time.
So long.
Hey, wait a minute. You got change coming.
What's it to you?
Bert. Look. Truck drivers.
So, President Hoover didn't quite know how to deal with the country crashing. No one did. It was a mess. He just kept hoping things would get better, which they didn't. The one thing he and Congress did create was the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. That gave $2 billion in direct government loans to struggling banks and businesses. But then again, nothing was done for the average person on the street who was suffering. No one was happy. Luckily, a new president was elected. This president, Franklin D. Roosevelt, had a new philosophy. He believed that it was the government's job to take direct action to help people. There's a clip coming up.
The government also passed a series of acts called the New Deal. The government focused on 3 main ways to fix the nation: relief, recovery, and reform. One act of relief was called the Tennessee Valley Act, which helped to build dams on the river to create power plants and to supply affordable power to the poor farmers living in the area. Another act of relief was the Works Progress Administration, which hired jobless workers to build public buildings and amenities like schools, roads, and libraries. Similar to this was the Civilian Conservation Corps, which hired people to conserve the environment by planting trees, creating hiking trails, and preserving national forests. The nation needed to recover from the economic crisis that had hit. One act of recovery was called the Glass-Steagall Act. It provided federal insurance for individual bank accounts and guaranteed to keep people's money safe. The Agricultural Adjustment Act paid farmers to only sow a portion of their crops in order to reduce the supply and raise prices. There were many areas in which the government needed to reform in order to prevent further economic downfall or even another Great Depression. One act of reformation was ending prohibition and closing all banks for 4 days after the stock market crash. By allowing alcohol to be legal again, it helped to boost the flow of the economy. By closing banks, it allowed banks to get back up on their feet again. Another act to help reform was the National Industrial Recovery, which gave workers the right to unionize and bargain higher wages. Another act passed was called the Securities and Exchange Commission, which regulated the economy and protected stocks. Lastly, the government passed the Social Security Act, which guaranteed pensions to millions of Americans. So you see, the government really stepped up to help end the Depression. All of their acts helped the cause, and some are still around today.
2 famous programs that he created: the CCC, which gave jobs to unemployed men. They went around planting trees, improving parks, living in tents, but at least they were getting fed and were given jobs. The other, which is more famous, that hired almost 8.5 million people, was the WPA. That hired everybody to build, to cook. A lot of musicians and artists were hired. You can go around today and see some of the incredible murals that the artists left behind. One is in the famous Coit Tower in San Francisco. Hope you get to check it out. So how far should the government go to try to improve the lives of citizens? Is it appropriate to use deficit spending when necessary to relieve suffering? What standards would you apply to decide how much help is too little and too much? This discussion during the Depression is still going on today. There is no simple answer. However, soon you will be running things, so start thinking about it. Many ways, everybody's got a different viewpoint. Franklin D. Roosevelt did great things. I think a lot of people will admit that it helped save a lot of people's lives. However, some people still felt like it was too much government interference, whereas Huey Long, the governor of Louisiana, said, no, you need to do more. All in all, I'm glad Franklin D. Roosevelt took over. On that note, just to let you know, 2 programs that you probably will take and help your life someday, if not already, were created during this time period under President Roosevelt. Minimum wage. So who are you? Or working in fast food? How would you like it if somebody turned around and said, nah, we feel like paying you $1 an hour? Nope, I don't think so. So minimum wage law, where businesses cannot go beneath a certain amount. This was declared to help make sure people have somewhat of a living wage. And Social Security, you don't need it now, but believe me, when you're old, it's a really good thing to have a guaranteed pension. So anyway, think about this time period, think about today, because there is still a lot going on that happened then that you could relate to today.